And we're live. Welcome everybody to the Backdrop CMS community meeting. Today we're going to be talking about the Drupal 7 soft landing initiative and how that relates to Backdrop in various ways. Turn off the intro screen. My name is Luke McCormick. I'm a web project manager in San Ramon, California, and I go by Cellier on the internet. Let me throw it over to Martin.
Hi, I'm Martin, a web developer in Northeast England, United Kingdom. Go to Greg.
Hi, my name is Greg. I'm joining from Melbourne. As always, eager to help with whatever the community needs, and I'll pass it on to Irina.
Hi, my name is Irina Zaks. I'm a web developer and open source evangelist working out of California, South Bay area, Mountain View. And off to Tim.
Sure. My name is Tim Erickson. I'm St. Paul Tim. I am in Deerwood, Minnesota, roughly right now, and just really busy. Starting to gear up for our Backdrop Live event, which is happening in 3 weeks from tomorrow. So start telling us, start getting your topic ideas in. Sarvashri, you're next.
Okay, yeah, my name is Sarvashri, and I'm in Walnut Cove, North Carolina. And I'm just doing some simple site building and learning about the community and what I might be able to contribute. So back to Luke, I guess, for catching up on things.
All right, I was just the MC. So this is Irina and Tim's meeting. So
Did we get Greg? Greg did.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, we did.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
All right, so Irina, if you're ready, want to give it a shot?
Yeah. Well, I think today we had an official meeting to talk about Drupal 7 soft landing initiative for official introduction. We started as a community initiative, and we have landing page on Drupal.org. So it's landing page for soft landing initiative. And one of the big goals of this initiative is to provide safe exit for people who are currently on Drupal 7 and can't move off Drupal 7 for a variety of reasons, mostly economical. So the goal of this initiative is to, as it states here, is to provide Drupal 7 site owners with guidance of what to do before Drupal 7's end of life date. And that includes a variety of topics for discussion. And primary goal is to provide information so people can understand what are their options. And the second point after that is to provide easier tools to migrate off Drupal 7. That includes better site audit tools, including site audit module, and various tools for easy upgrades. First step is to understand what are your options as a Drupal 7 site owner, go through this document, and then participate in forums, ask questions, propose sessions. And this is where this initiative is right now. Hope is that within the next 6 months, including events like Meet Camp, Stanford Camp, DrupalCon, Asheville, and maybe some other camps, people will be looking at the alternatives and making their choices and starting moving their sites to systems that are going to be supported for the next, hopefully, decade. So that is my pitch, and I'm happy to, propose discussion, questions, whatever people are interested in. And I want to thank everyone who's already contributed to making this initiative easier. And one of the big things is, Greg, thank you very much for digging so deep in the code and finding the source of one seemingly small problem that was happening on one of the big hosting platforms, Pantheon, that allows people to do their migrations much smoother. So it has been pushed, it's in the most recent release, and this is really a fantastic step forward. So thank you very much. So with this,
So-
I want to open, discussion, questions, stories. Tim, told all your stories now.
So, Irina, can you say something about sort of what the role, something more about, it's fairly new that, that Backdrop is even mentioned on Drupal.org, and it's fairly new that we've been having there's been a couple of conversations between members of the DEA and the Backdrop community, sort of more official discussions. Obviously, some of us are members of both communities, so that informally that's happening all the time, but it's happened a little bit more formal, and I'm trying to figure out how better to talk about what that relationship, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are.
Well, I think that my thoughts are coming from the open source definition. Backdrop is a fork of Drupal. This is a statement that is not really debatable. It technically is a fork of Drupal. Different people have different perspective on using tools like Composer. People have different perspective on using object-oriented PHP or using Twig. These are all great initiatives and great things. And also there is a number of discussions like what would be a good name for Drupal after Drupal 7, like not, so whether it's classic Drupal or modern Drupal to, like if Drupal 7 is classic Drupal, then Drupal after that is modern Drupal or Drupal X or Drupal Sharp or whatever. There's an interesting discussion on LinkedIn started by Mike Anella, and I think it's a very legitimate and important thing to have a good terminology, because people who are not big part of Drupal community, they don't know really difference like Drupal 7, Drupal 8, Drupal 9, Drupal 10, Drupal 11. For them, it's just Drupal, right? So being more clear about these definitions is one good thing that's happening. And the page that is up there talking about what are the options for people to move off Drupal 7 and clearly explaining reasons why Drupal 7 cannot be supported indefinitely are the core of this initiative. So we have a building that's not seismically safe anymore. People can stay there for a little bit, but they need to get out. And it is community's responsibility to make sure that they have exit strategy. Because people who are in the building can't always know what's happening around and what are their options. So the biggest goal of the initiative at this point is to educate and talk about options available to people. And for some of those, Drupal 10 or 11 is a great option. And when, if Drupal 11 will have Project Browser, or Drupal 12, whenever it comes in, right? That would be much easier for people to use modern Drupal when they don't have to deal with Composer installation. Look, there's lots of underlying technology that blocks people from moving towards modern Drupal. For some people, static HTML is a better alternative. Some people will be moving to Squarespace because they need more integration with commercial tools, with membership. There are tools that are much more economically efficient on different platforms. And Backdrop is one of great most sustainable options for certain type of websites. And so the educational part is the most important part of Drupal 7 soft landing initiative at this time.
Okay, you actually predicted the question I was Diana asked, and maybe I can flesh that out a little bit more. I was going to ask you, since we're obviously coming to this from a backdrop specific perspective, I want to ask you what other options besides backdrop and Drupal were being bounced around in the soft landing community, just so that to give us a sense for what kind of features people find, compelling and important.
I think it's a question for more for community than for me. So is it? I think that as people publish talk about what are their choices and preferences, we will have more kind of track record. But there are a couple of like really large and well-known alternatives, and then there are people going to go to a variety of different platforms. And
I was just curious which ones were being kicked around. Like you mentioned Squarespace, that surprised me a little bit. You didn't mention WordPress. I'm curious if that's
WordPress is definitely very sustainable, great platform. And I think that one of the biggest advantages of Drupal platform and Backdrop, as I said, Backdrop is a fork of Drupal. So this is a part of community, as we heard last August, was reassured. And my preference would be always to build with Drupal family platforms is when I have sites with lots of relationships and clearly defined content type, complex sites that require things like views, require fields like filtering. There are lots of sites that don't need it at all. So, and there are so many different options and so many different features, with React being a very big thing these days, with lots of decoupled sites. People will make all kinds of choices. So this is, hopefully we will know more about these choices as people talk about them.
Skimming through the official page in Drupal.org about the specific initiative and I'm talking about the subsection that is linked from the main section. So the main section has a short description, like a couple of paragraphs, and then it links to initiatives, goals, and scope. And then I wanted to focus and point out that the second link is understanding your options as a D7 site owner. And that's where Backdrop gets the mention. And it's at the very bottom, but at least it gets the mention. There's no other platform or solution being mentioned by name in that page that I could see. And I'm not sure if, so there's two things, right? We could mention WordPress there, or Wix or Squarespace, but I guess because these platforms are not friendly or family, right? Maybe they, maybe it's less sort of like appropriate. I don't know. Maybe it won't be accepted, right? Maybe they could be implied but not mentioned by name. I don't know. But one thing that I wanted to point out was that although it's a big thing that Backdrop is being mentioned, I see that there's from an SEO perspective, right? How people can find it. It's being mentioned 3 times in the same paragraph, right? However, from a selfish sort of like perspective, I would like it there to be a dedicated section, not a lot of details, not getting into the technical, step by step what you do, but maybe explaining the pros and cons so that people can make a decision. I know that most of us will have a selfish sort of like drive there, but we need to keep a mind that this is a Drupal section, a section of the Drupal site, and we need to sort of like, I don't know how to phrase it, not make it intrusive, or maybe what people, maybe outline what people would benefit from, if like what you would keep, the fact that you get some benefits from or features that have been implemented in Drupal 8, 9, and 10, things like that. I would like a little bit more literature, not a lot, And as I said, I don't want this to be an what you call it as I don't want it to be just a plug.
Advocacy. You're saying,
Yes,
or-
yes, but not just a plug of, hey, Backdrop exists. For more information, go there. I don't want it to be an essay. I just want it to be like bullet points of, maybe outlining very simple steps of the process. Like you need to do this, this, and that, details there. You gain this, and that, but a little bit more. That's what I'm saying. And I don't know if that's appropriate, if it would be acceptable or not. And I wouldn't want also the burden of this to fall on the people that put the effort on this initiative. In other words, maybe we can draft something and then we can present it to Irina and the rest of the people, and then they can do the wordsmithing and deduction, if you like, and then they can, and I would like to help with that. So yeah, it's out there.
Well, Greg, this was the angle actually that I was touching on with my question previously. There is a hazard for people wanting to advocate their own positions versus do what the end user is looking for. So as a way to kind of sidestep that, I wanted to sort of do two things to sort of construct the matrix. One was, as I mentioned, kind of figure out what the alternatives, what the candidates are for this. And the other piece that you sort of touched on there is figuring out what the attributes that people would be looking for there. So really, we can contribute to the global effort in two ways. One, by helping to figure out what the questions are, and that's relatively short, but here's the things that the people grapple with when they have a Drupal 7 site and they need to get off it. And then we can selfishly, advocate, with good conscience, answer those questions from the Backdrop perspective while still, inviting and encouraging other platforms to do the same. We can try to fill in those things, but just separating out the questions from our answers and letting the end user decide.
As I said, selfishly, I would like it to be a separate subsection of that page.
Yeah.
I would like to have subsections for the other options, and maybe some other people can do the work on that. But I'm offering to help with the Backdrop bit, and the various paragraphs or sections of that page, I imagine would be, as I said, the pros and cons, what people get as features, right? Outlines, as I said. But also, we need to get more people from the Drupal community behind this. So we need a paragraph or a section that explains what the benefits of people moving to Backdrop would be for the Drupal community.
Yeah.
As in what Nate has outlined in his announcement like 10 years ago, and Tim rehashed in his blog article. And also, Tim, by the way, thank you for putting together that graph that shows, because we don't have it. We have numbers of our usage in the site, but that gives a visual representation.
Let's take this opportunity actually to throw it to Tim a little bit, since you wrote a blog article about this and you just gave a presentation.
Exactly.
So
Sure. So I'd also like to get Irina's feedback. I think, Greg, your suggestions were probably very familiar, and I could judge by, or very useful. I think by Irina's reaction, she would agree that if, to the extent that we constructively contribute and offer specific suggestions, we're more likely to get changes on that site than if we just sort of complain, right? So if we actually get in there and provide some text, and I would also suggest if we give feedback on the entire page and not just the part about us, that might also be helpful if they can see that we're trying to be constructive and help with the whole thing. So we gave some feedback. Irina, could you say quickly, did you write this page, or did Tim Lehman write most of that page, or do you know who authored that page?
I don't know who authored this page.
Okay.
It was a collaborative effort
Okay.
from different people in Drupal Association and myself. It's not
Right.
like one author wrote it, or it also has been discussed, and people provided feedback on the original content.
Good.
and one of the basic principles of successful open source is mutual respect.
Right.
And so people are being respectful of different perspectives. For some people, classic Drupal is not an option. They have to have Composer at the part of their DevOps
Mhm.
process.
Yeah.
For other people, WordPress is a better solution because they don't have actually DevOps at all. So the keyword is diversity, and it applies everywhere. It applies to projects, it applies to people, it applies to our ideas, and this is what we support as a community.
Yeah, this
Um,
was part of what I was thinking would go in that section of, so the way that I envision it, we should be keeping an eye on things, a point of view from things from the Drupal perspective, right? We
Yeah.
should put aside the our backdrop selves, and like try to see it from that focus. So how I was envisioning that section would be, like you would have a subsection that says move to WordPress, move to Wix, right? And move to Backdrop. The move to Backdrop thing, which is an option, would have what are the benefits for site owners?
Right.
What are the benefits for digital agencies and developers? The whole, if you're familiar with Drupal, this will be the same. You don't have to learn anything new, not a lot of things new, right? And then what would be the benefits for the community? And
Right.
the thing around there, the outline would be retain people, stop people from bleeding away, because in the future they might have the budget, or their project, which is not as big or as ambitious now, might become ambitious, and moving from Backdrop to Drupal will not be as hard as having people flee away
Right.
to other platforms, right?
Yeah.
Which may be a not turning back thing, right?
I like a lot of what you're saying, Greg, and I think that's all at the stage where we could give some very specific feedback, and we should do that at another time. But I also like what you said about thinking about this from the Drupal perspective right now. Right now, this is a Drupal initiative to help Drupal 7 site owners find the best alternative. And we have a role to play in that, but we need to keep in mind that when we're doing this, we're acting also, some of us at least, as part of the Drupal community as well. And that was some of the feedback I got from my session that I did in Florida. Irina, I think you want to say something, and I know your time is limited, so why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I wanted to reiterate that what Greg is saying about supporting people staying in community is a huge, how do I say, it's a huge incentive for everyone who works in Drupal community. Most of people, it's not clear for like Drupal part of community, what's the relationship between people and all the moving parts. Clearly, people who are moving from Drupal to, say, Squarespace, and we do have one of examples of such a thing, they will never be able to contribute back to Drupal. The fact that people who are working, the fact that Backdrop is a fork of Drupal, and when people work on Backdrop projects, often they contribute back to Drupal 10 and 11 as well in various ways, is a very important factor. And I think that is one of the big things that needs to be highlighted and surfaced.
You're muted, Tim.
When I muted myself, I said, I'm not going to forget, but I did. Okay. I think so. In terms of actionable, where this, what is this initiative doing? I think the first, my key points, if somebody asked me to sort of explain this initiative and what it can do, I think first of all, the motivation comes from the place of what Irina has talked about, that Drupal 7 is just no longer safe, and that it certainly won't be, but some of us could argue it already is, and that as a community, as somebody in the Drupal community, I feel like we have some responsibility to the site owners that are never going to go to Drupal 8 or 9. So then, so what is the action then that comes out of that? And I think the action is some of the stuff that Irina's already been doing, which is creating materials to help Drupal 7 site owners understand their options. I put a link in the do I still have it here? I put a link in the notes or the chat of an article that Irina wrote where she actually does talk about Drupal 7 or Drupal 8, 9, Backdrop and WordPress as 3 different options. And I think you create kind of a decision tree in that article, don't you, Irina? Well, we can just look at this quick. So this is an article on Pantheon, migrating from Drupal 7. This goes back to April 6th, almost a year ago. But if we go down here, she's basically got WordPress, Backdrop, and Drupal 9 as options.
Here's the grid I was looking for.
Yeah, and I think, and there's kind of a decision tree here. And I wanted to bring that up because in my presentation in Florida, oops. Let's just stop sharing. In my presentation in Florida, I struggled a little bit with like, what is, I wanted to talk about this topic, but what was the right approach? And I had presented the topic as very much from a backdrop perspective, but not completely, talking about the whole initiative. And it felt like one of the valuable things I could do, and that I've seen some other people, Irina and Kevin Rainin, have both gave interesting presentations at Bad Camp, where they talked sort of about the different use, how do you make the decision? What is the use case for Drupal 9, 10 or 8, 9? This is why we need a new term. I don't know what to say. Drupal 8, 9, 9, 10. Modern Drupal is one of the. What is the use case for modern Drupal, and what is the use case for Backdrop? As a small agency, I've built both. I've moved Drupal 7 sites to both Backdrop and to Drupal, modern Drupal. And so I just spent a little time. I thought it would be really useful to spend a little time just talking about why I made that decision in each case. Irina, you really did the same thing in Bad Camp, where you gave here are different projects. You talked specifically about research projects at universities, but you're like, here's why this one went to Backdrop, and here's why this one went to Drupal 7. And I think one of the things that we can be doing is helping provide those kinds of educational materials, right, to help Drupal 7 users understand their alternatives. Also to help Drupal 7 Drupal agencies to understand the value of working with both products, right? If we had more Drupal agencies that were recognized the value of Backdrop for their clients and participating in the project, that would be helpful. And we can do something to help them with that. I think the other thing that I did is I talked briefly about the tools, and I talked specifically about the tools available for migrating from Drupal 7 to Backdrop. But, I just had an agency come to me, another agency that is a WordPress agency, and they have they just took over some Backdrop and Drupal 7 sites. And they're like, there's 2 of those, they took over a bunch of them, and 2 of them, they want to move to WordPress. And they're like, how do I do that? And I, I don't, moving to WordPress, I have, I really had no knowledge of like what the best way to do that is. But that might be, maybe there should be better documentation and tools, or at least a better listing of the tools available for that. I'm going to pause here because Irina, I think, is at the end of her time, and give her a last chance to say anything.
Well, first, I want to thank you very much for having me here for this conversation. I want to thank this wonderful community for doing so much to support this initiative. It's been a lot of work. I see Nate coming. Hi, Nate. Thank you very much. Greg and Nate, thank you so. Hi, thank you very, very much for fixing that bug. So to make smooth transition, we're working with D2B migrate module, hoping to make it even smoother. And if there are any developers for this module here, I want to thank them very much. One of the beautiful things about Git is, all the authors are listed out there. So we want great opportunity to say thank you. And team, I'd be happy to PM you directly with great module for moving things into WordPress if you need, because community meetings are for sharing.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, we are an open source community and we're here to support each other and our clients in
Right.
a positive way. So thank you very much. And I'm sorry, I have to go.
Bye. Thanks for
Okay,
coming.
thanks for
But
joining
thank
us.
you very much and hope to see you at Backdrop Live at MidCamp and at any events in Bay Area live. And by the way, Stanford Drupal Camp is coming soon, so I'll be posting some information here as well. Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
So, on that note, so I did a session at Drupal, a Florida Drupal camp called Drupal 7 Soft Landing, and I've already described to you a little bit about the kind of the focus was. I made the focus one about like how to make how we did, and I also talked a little bit about the Stanford case, like why they chose Backdrop in one case and why they might choose Drupal, modern Drupal in another. I'm just going to start saying that modern Drupal. I like symphonic Drupal, but but Nate, I don't know if you've seen the discussions going around. Mike and Ella's been pushing. Let's settle on a term for Drupal 8, 9, 10.
That's a great
Enterprise
idea.
Drupal, Symphony-based Drupal, off the island Drupal.
Anyways, so where was I? So I focused my presentation sort of on how to make that choice and how I've made that choice. The same session has been accepted for MidCamp. I submitted it, but Irina's going to be there. I don't think it's, by the way, I'm not supposed to be publicizing yet the schedule because they're still working out the details, but I think that's pretty close. So anyway, so we have a session at another camp coming up, and I'd like to talk more about whether, like how to modify the session. Certainly having Irina there is going to help, and how we want to talk about that. An idea that I wish Irina were here to get her feedback on that just came to me during this meeting is to do that like we could offer some help with, is to have like a Backdrop Live type event, but call it Drupal 7 Soft Landing. It's not specific Backdrop, right? This is an event for Drupal 7 site owners to explore their alternatives. And we could help organize it. We could invite any other CMS that wants to come, or anybody that wants to pitch it. Obviously, the Drupal community would be there talking about why Drupal, modern Drupal is a good alternative. But the focus of the event would be providing, safe exit alternatives for Drupal 7 site owners. And I don't know. I like the idea. What do other people think?
I want to inject something in that. I actually, when I was at Accenture, did exactly this for the state of Michigan, which was on Vignette Story Server, a CMS that had reached end of life. And it was called a bake-off, where we had 5 different CMSs. Acquia Drupal was one of them. Present and make the case for their platform as being a exit strategy. So I'll throw out the term bake-off as something that could apply to this.
Sure. But for me, this could be I think this could be a really great idea, because if the Drupal Association sort of got behind it and said, if we're really looking to provide options for Drupal 7 site owners because we want them to move, and if they got behind it and really helped get the word out there, this could be instead of the 50, 60 people we get at Backdrop Live, this could be several hundred, 500 people participating, and we wouldn't have the sole stage as Backdrop, but that would be great. I think it would be really great to have us on the stage with WordPress and other things as an alternative. So right now we're sort of so segmented, and people don't always think about us in combination, as one of several alternatives, right? And I think that would be healthy for us. So I'm going to pitch that idea to Irina and see what she thinks.
I will know more once I communicated enough with the people in the company that I work for, like my day job.
Mhm.
But we have a sort of like it's actually threefold, three separate ideas. Because we are a Drupal digital agency, of course, we suggest that people move to a modern Drupal version as well. That's one of the options. But we also give another another two options to customers. Unfortunately, none of them is Backdrop, but anyway, one of them is actually sort of like putting a CDN, sort of like a static site solution. And I should say it's a hybrid, because the search functionality and views functionality still works. And you sort of like deprecate or archive the website in a safe place behind the CDN. The content authors still have access to the backend so that they can update the content. So it's not completely archived and just put away, right? But then instead of directly publishing it, it sort of like pushes the each time that you make an update, it pushes the updates to the CDN. So from a security perspective, sort of like it's a different approach to the problem. But where I was getting at is that companies like the company that I work for that have interesting different solutions might be interested in such an event to come and pitch their idea,
Right.
which is not
Yeah.
it. Yeah. So I'm assuming that there would be interest from the marketing efforts that I've seen in the company, but I will have to have a solid, like what you just proposed. I need that to be in a form of an online resource that I can forward to the marketing people in my company and say, would this be something that you would be interested to present?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm pretty excited about that idea. Ray James, are you still here? I did post the link to chat, but if you joined us
Yes, sir.
after, if you joined us afterwards, you won't see it. So I'll repost the link.
Appreciate it.
I'm going to also put it in. Actually, well, I'll put it in both, in Zulip as well. So we're running out of time. There's two. I think pursuing this idea of a Drupal 7 a soft landing event is one action item to come out of this. I'd like to move towards what are other possible action items, and we have Backdrop Live coming up in 3 weeks. So, we could just rehold this discussion, which I think in itself would be valuable. But the other thing we could do is, part of the opportunity for the soft landing initiative is for it to motivate us to improve. It's always our goal. I mean, we're always trying to improve the migration tools. But I think the difficulty we have as a community is that most of us that are active in the community, we already have processes to migrate, right? And it doesn't meet our self-interest, except for when folks like Ray come around and start asking lots of questions. That gets us excited to help Ray. But then when Ray finishes his project, we kind of settle in and forget, and are more interested in making Backdrop better than we are in those migration tools. And I'd like to figure out a way how we can, prioritize how we can make the migration better, and how to keep that development moving. Irina has talked about, I think, I'll phrase this very vaguely because I don't want to promise anything on her behalf, but I think Irina has talked about that we could probably raise some money and that she might be able to help us, not huge amounts, but some money to help coordinate or work on an effort like this, which is not something we've done in the past, but this would be an experiment and it might be a good thing because it benefits the whole community. So there's another in Backdrop, what can we do around the I'm almost thinking also about, like, we have the beginner Backdrop for beginners track that we experimented with last time. Maybe we should do another track, which is the upgrade track, which is about demonstrating, or that focuses on demonstrating and talking about the tools we have. We have a couple of, in my presentation, I talked about, I think, the 3 big tools that we have as a community for upgrades right now, at different levels of of completion are the backdrop upgrade status module, the D2B migrate module, and more recently, Jen released this Drupal 7 compatible theme. And
And
I'm
coder
guessing,
update and coder update. Coder updates should be included there. Right?
okay,
Because
yes, you're right. That would be another valuable tool for this. Ooh, I can't believe I forgot that one. Okay, so we'll add that next time. Anyways, so we could do sort of a track that really focuses on those tools, letting people know about them, but also getting feedback on how to make them better.
As a general thought, I like your idea, Tim, but as a general thought, because we are all involved in a way or another with Drupal communities, be it local or, you know, some of us attend DrupalCons, one thing that we as a Drupal community as well have not been great at is, although D7 was supported for all these years, all the official events were focused on the new versions. Like we had very scarce, like the very few Drupal 7 centered presentations were not actually presented centered around the Drupal 7 site owners. It was sort of like a push to move them to the newer versions of Drupal, right? And they were focusing on that, how great the new versions are, right? So they're still assuming that this November will be the final end of life, which it's like 50-50, I don't know, maybe not. We still have some time. We don't have a lot of time. So it wouldn't be a huge ask to, as I sort of like talked about it or mentioned it before while Irina was here, but we should start seeding the idea of, you know what, dedicate 5% of the sessions to this cause, because it's like we don't have enough time and we need to retain the community before we actually reach the official end of life. So I would like everyone to have that at the back of their heads. And even if it's just bed of feather discussions or whatever, it's just as an idea. Hey, why don't we just push for the remainder of the time that we have until end of life for just to have a decent amount or you know, of sessions dedicated to people like D7 owners and this hand holding, be it moving to backdrop or whatever. Yes.
Oops, sorry. Ray just asked in chat, do we have, and I'm sorry if I interrupted you, Greg, but he asked about usage stats. And these are the, this is the usage graph. You could, if you just Google Drupal 7 usage, you can find this graph pretty easily. There are still more Drupal 7 sites than there are modern Drupal sites, I believe. It's probably getting pretty close now. Modern Drupal might be very close to overtaking. These stats are almost a month old, but just barely a month old. As you can see, still 425,000 reporting Drupal 7 sites. I can also, for those of you who haven't seen it, let me share. Greg made a note of this earlier. This is a graph I made of our backdrop usage stats, which, you know, it's optimistic in that we're seeing slow, steady incline that just from the beginning to today. But, you know, I'd like to see a little bit of a curve upward, but, you know, I can't be sad about this, but we, you know, we'd all like to see that curve a little upward and go accelerate a little faster. So, and this is also available if you Google backdrop usage stats, you should be, you won't find this graph. This graph is something I made personally because we don't have a graph on the website for it. We should end this. Anybody else have final thoughts about Drupal 7 soft landing and how we should be leveraging this opportunity?
I could say something.
Sure.
We should have sort of a pros and cons section for each of the options that people can fill in. What are the pros and cons of doing this over that, which could be, you know, transitioning cost, ongoing maintenance costs, lack of modules in this or that or the other application for doing what they currently have, the ease with which modules could be adapted that don't yet exist for Backdrop that could be needed by some people moving from Drupal 7. So just sort of a Benjamin Franklin, list of pros, list of cons, so people can see at a glance.
And I would like to point out that that list shouldn't be a feature comparison, right? It would be a high level, sort of like the things that come to mind is, as I said, the high level thing of you don't have to retrain your content editors as a site owner. You don't have to retrain your developers as a digital agency. So these kind of things, not really to the point. Oh, we have this project browser thing, which is cool in Backdrop, or it needs to be very high level, right? Decision making, bullet points, executive summary, sort of. Yeah.
Whatever
Okay.
I think people will want in the anything that's a deal breaker, even if it's minor, it might be important to put there.
Exactly.
Okay, well, let's wrap this meeting up. The next meeting's supposed to start in a few minutes. I think Nate's been busy getting ready for it, right, Nate?
Yep.
So, okay. We have the last thing I want to do is just switch to Backdrop Live. Who has a topic for Ray as the new person here? Backdrop. Have you participated in Backdrop Live yet?
No, I don't even know what that is.
Okay, so Backdrop Live, we were doing them 3 times a year. We just cut it back to twice a year. So we've done about 9 of them. It's like a 24-hour online Drupal camp, but it's for Backdrop. But it's an unconference model. So you just nominate a topic and we find a slot for you. There's no session selection. We don't expect people to have, there will be some sort of prepared presentations, but for the most part, it's like, I just want to talk about migrations and I want people to come and share their experiences. And so I put migrations up on the schedule, and I might have like a few questions prepared in advance, maybe a few slides to help get the discussion going, but you don't need to have, the point is you don't have to sort of have a polished presentation, or you don't have to be the expert. What some people have done, including myself, is say, I'm trying to do X and I'm really stuck on this. I'm going to have a session at Backdrop Live, and hopefully people smarter than me are going to come and answer my questions. And that can work too. And, so for example, I think I have not been as active in Zulip lately. I see your name popping up, but I haven't followed closely. I think you're in the middle of a big migration, right?
Yeah, massive one.
Right. So, hypothetically, you could say, my experiences with an upgrade and come in and just sort of talk about like how the processes went for you. Maybe you have some things to show, maybe you don't, maybe you just talk about it, but you could also then have, here are the challenges I'm still working on solving, and then ask and try to get help from other people. So it isn't like you would be coming in as the expert to explain migrations to everybody. That's just one thought. And I don't know if that's something you want to do, but I wanted to throw that out.
It's like the ultimate unconference thing. You don't need any presentation at all. You don't need anything more than a title. And then
title and someone to facilitate the discussion. Or some people to co-facilitate.
You need to be willing to sort of show up and,
to be there
and facilitate the discussion. So anyways, I'd like to get at least one more session on the schedule today, but let's end the meeting now. We can talk about it in the interim or during the next meeting. Bye, everybody.
Tim, real quickly, did you put a discussion about the D7 soft landing thing? Do we have a?
I was going to get feedback from this group on exactly how to do that, but we'll get something on the schedule. We don't yet.
Right. Cool.
Okay.